Thank you, Mr. Alnuaimi, for all these information. Now I will give the floor to Mrs. Julia Lenger, who is the Regional Legal Officer for the Gulf region in Al Karama Foundation. So she will also speak about this subject.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Julia Legner. As mentioned, I'm the Legal Regional Officer at Al Karama, and I will be addressing you today on the unlawful restrictions of freedom of expressions in the United Arab Emirates. Just a few words to my organization. Al Karama is a legal human rights foundation that assists all those in the Arab world at risk of extrajudicial execution, arbitrary detention, and forced disappearance and torture. Acting as a bridge between the individuals in the Arab world and the UN human rights mechanisms, we work towards an Arab world where all individuals live free in dignity and by the rule of law. Over the past 12 years, Al Karama has been documenting hundreds of cases of human rights violations in the United Arab Emirates and documenting them to the UN human rights mechanisms. Among the latest cases documented are those of Libyan-Canadian citizen Salim al-Aradi, arbitrarily detained, tortured, and accused of terrorism. Nasser bin Ghaith, who disappeared for 8 months and is now being prosecuted by the State Security Chamber of the Federal Supreme Court. And the Jordanian journalist Taysir al-Salman or al-Najjar, who was also disappeared 5 months ago. He had been threatened by the authorities in order to confess and has not been charged to date. While the United Arab Emirates were not majorly affected by the Arab Spring, the UAE have experienced regular demands by civil society for more openness, transparency, and political participation. State attempts to control freedom of expression, opinion, assembly, and association have therefore increased exponentially. We are concerned that in 2016, Emirati civil society continued to suffer severe repression by the authorities in retaliation for peacefully making use of their universal right to freedom of expression. I'll be now addressing the criminalization of freedom of expression and on peaceful political opposition through the systematic practice of enforced disappearance followed by arbitrary detention. The responsible authorities for this practice are the state security forces, or Amn al-Dawla, which operate under the direct control of the Ministry of Interior and report directly to the President of the Federation. As such, the forces are not subjected to any independent judicial authority. The legal basis of their existence is Federal Law No. 2 of 2003 on the state security, which, in violation to the Constitution of the United Arab Emirates, has not been published in its official legal gazette. These forces have their own detention facilities, as well as an exceptional justice system, that is the State Security Court, a court responsible for prosecuting the accused at both the first and the last instance. The proceedings before the court are characterized by gross violations of their fundamental rights. These severe violations have regularly been highlighted by the UN Working Group on Arbitrary Detention and other UN bodies. The intelligence services also operate in a way that generates chain violations. Usually, the victim is arbitrarily arrested, then detained in secret detention and solitary confinement, as well as incommunicado for prolonged periods of time, during which he or she is then subjected to torture or psychological, physical pressure in order to obtain confessions that will be used as evidence for prosecution before the State Security Chamber of the Supreme Court, resulting in an unfair trial, at the outcome of which the sentence can then not even be appealed. This modus operandi of the state security creates systematic fair trial violations. So the question is, what remedies do victims have? Since the security-related cases are heard by the Supreme Court's security chamber as the first and last resort, as such, basically there's no way, no right to appeal. Moreover, although most of the victims claimed before the security chamber that they've been tortured or forced to sign false confessions, no investigations were subsequently opened. On the contrary, in all cases, the statements extracted under torture were accepted as evidence by the security chamber during the trials. We also recall that the United Arab Emirates show constant unwillingness to cooperate with the UN human rights mechanisms by either not responding to urgent appeals and allegations or by responding without giving substantial information on the alleged violations. And especially in cases of disappearance without disclosing the whereabouts of the victim, and also regardless of opinions issued by the Working Group on Arbitrary Detention, victims remain in custody. There's 2 points in particular I want to make regarding legislation. First of all, I'll be talking about the anti-terrorism law, namely law number 7 of 2014, which provides an extremely broad and vague definition of terrorism and continues to serve as the legal basis for the prosecution of peaceful political opponents. In her report, the Special Rapporteur on the Independence of Judges and Lawyers who visited the United Arab Emirates in 2015 has noted that such an approach to the definition of terrorism opens the door to abuses and arbitrariness. As such, Article 1 of the law defines terrorist acts as an act that would cause unrest or panic amongst a group of people or that would otherwise upset the state, without specifying, for example, the violent nature of such acts, and hence paving the way for the criminalization of peaceful protest. Under the terrorism law, the custody period can be extended by renewable 3 months periods without even presenting the detainee before a judge. Therefore, the 2014 terrorism law establishes an exceptional legal regime to the detriment of all the people accused under it. The other law is the cybercrime law, as already mentioned by Mr. Alnuaimi, law number 5 of 2012, which includes harsh punishments that could go up to a life sentence or fines up to 3 million dirhams, depending on the severity and seriousness of the crime. Article 20 of the law makes defamation or making slanderous comments online a criminal offense and provides for either an unspecified period of imprisonment or a fine between 250,000 and 500,000 Emirati dirhams. Moreover, promoting demonstrations without license online is also criminalized. The United Arab Emirates have not ratified the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, Article 19 of which outlines the right to freedom of expression. However, they are party to the Arab Charter on Human Rights, Article 32 of which ensures the right to information, freedom of opinion, and freedom of expression. In view of these circumstances, we issue the following suggestions and measures to put an end to the unlawful restriction of freedom of expression. First of all, the UAE should ratify the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights and its optional protocols, as well as the Convention for the Protection of All Persons from Enforced Disappearance. The state security forces should be put under an independent judicial control in order to stop their abuses. The practice of arrests without judicial mandate and for acts that are falling under the rights of freedom of expression, opinion, peaceful assembly and association should be stopped, and the United Arab Emirates should implement the Uyghur opinions requesting the release of those still imprisoned, stop the practice of enforced disappearance through secret detention by putting those who are currently disappeared under the protection of the law and offering redress to the victims. With regards to legislation, we urge the United Arab Emirates to amend provisions of the cybercrime law as to guarantee the freedom of expression. And lastly, the 2014 law on terrorism should be revised in order to restrict the definition of terrorism to acts of violence that specifically target civilians, and to put the procedure in line with international due process guarantees. Thank you.
Thank you very much.